Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Fire Force Chapter 257. When we last left our heroes, we opened with Company 8 trying to instill hope in the populace, and it seemed to be working, but the flames of despair did not die down, which led Victor and Joker to kind of go down the path that Sumire kind of laid out in the live action portion of 255. I'm still not sure how I feel about that from a thematic standpoint. But the whole concept of the masses are swept along and that's all they ever will do, I'm not big on. We'll see how the manga kind of challenges that view as it goes on. But much more interesting is a pair of doppelgangers that have emerged from Madola. One of them being Hague, who stuck an axe in one of his subordinates' heads. And more importantly for this chapter is the return of Rekka. So all that being said, let's jump right on into chapter 257, the bastard incarnation of hot-blooded despair. Which, like, what a chapter title right there, guys. That's just a great title. And our picture here is of Rekka. Fire! Fire! I'm on fire! It's hopeless. It's oh so very hopeless. And so, yeah, we open where we left off, with Rekka having just emerged from having blown up one of the frozen firestorms. It should be noted that unlike Hague, that looked very kind of scratchy in his outlines, Rekka just looks like himself. And given what we know about doppelgangers being like the amalgamation of public perception of a person, I'm curious what that means. I kind of called into question last week, as I recall, what of Hague's public perception would lead to him killing a member of Company 4. So maybe he's somehow been twisted compared to the original Hague, whereas Rekka's perception is much closer to the real thing? Maybe? I don't know. Anyway, let's stop dilly-dallying and jump in. We open with Rekka just, like, screaming, "Whoa! I'm back! Man, it sure got cold while I wasn't around." I mean, yeah, there was a bunch of ice. And Karim, we see sweating. No way. Hoyan as well. Is that really Rekka? Then Rekka looks at them. But I'm back, so it's all good now. Good morning! And then Karim seems happy to see him. Yep, it's that hot-headed Rekka, alright. I'm so glad to see you again. He's playing some kind of game. He's gonna attack Rekka. I can feel it. I feel the same, Karim. Let's get hot-blooded again. And then Karim just kind of reacts like frozen. And then Karim gets serious. Maybe he was joking the first... Oh, I just realized. The reason we see Karim frozen is that he looks down at Rekka, and he sees the hole in his chest that an arrow shot in him way back when. Which means that the perception of Rekka has been, like, permanently shifted by that arrow shot, I guess? I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe, like, the larger world has thought about Rekka so little because everything started happening right after Rekka died, kind of like how the audience doesn't really think about Rekka that much. That Karim and Hoyan's final image of him has kind of so burned into their brains that it's kind of overridden everything? I don't know. Anyway, Karim says, Rekka, it hurts me to say this, but you've already gone and died. The person in front of me is a mere shadow of the real you. And Rekka just grins. That's true, but don't worry about that little detail. And then Karim is kind of, like, confused. I think it looks like on the same line that I was kind of confused by. A doppelganger in the perfect image of Rekka. Could you actually be the real thing? Because, yeah, like, he looks like Rekka in a way that, say, Hibachi's, which was much more demonic, as was Burns's, and all of the millions of other, just regular Infernals were, along with, Hague, who is very different, who looks a little different than the real Hague. I don't know. Karim's right to be a little bit confused. But Rekka just asks, what do you mean the real thing? Do I look like the type of guy who cares about that tiny detail? We finally meet again, Karim, Hoyan. So let's destroy the world together. So yeah, that we're kind of seeing, that's where Karim and Hoyan cannot join him on. And Karim snaps, "Are you really planning on turning this world into another sun?" "That's right!" And Karim responds, "Rekka, were you really serious back then in that warehouse? You were tricked by the Whiteclads." Hold on, what? You were tricked by when did he claim to be tricked by the Whiteclads? Because I thought he was pretty clear that, like, he was a Whiteclad. That was what he kind of said. Like that's the warehouse where he fought Shinra, right? Or maybe Karim is still trying to justify things to himself, which is weird because that's not what we really saw back in 255 with the whole, or 254, I think, the whole line about, "Is this the world you fought for, Rekka?" I don't know. Karim is just kind of really hard to follow right now. But Hoyan is not. He just cuts through all the bullshit and comes right at Rekka and tries to attack him. And Rekka dodges. And Hoyan tells him, "Stop trying to act like Rekka. You're just a devil who's come to deceive us." And Rekka responds, "The same lawful Hoyan as always. I sure do love that about you." And then Rekka gets an attack ready. Despair! And he punches Hoyan, and Hoyan deflects with his one arm. "Come on, Hoyan, hotter, hotter, let's revel in despair together. Say, say, say! Say ya!" And he finally hits Hoyan in the side. And then Karim yells, "Stop it, both of you! Listen to me, you've been tricked by the Whiteclads." So yeah, it looks here like Karim is kind of convinced himself that Rekka was tricked. That Rekka is, like, I guess that could be how he sort of reconciled the two Rekkas. You know, his friend and the evil Whiteclad. Except there's never really been any indication that Rekka was tricked by the Whiteclads, and B, there's never been any indication that Karim believed that Rekka was tricked by the Whiteclads. I mean, as early as like 3 chapters ago, he was saying, you know, "Is this the world you wished for, Rekka?" I don't know. Like, I'm into the concept of this chapter, right? That Karim has to deal with the fact that his friend was never really his friend. That Rekka was always evil, and now that Rekka is staring him in the face, he has to deal with that. But I kind of wish the conflict, if I'm right about what the conflict of this chapter is, was like set up more in Karim's own, like, whenever we would focus on Karim. Because, like, the idea that he doesn't, unless I'm just completely missing something, which I might be, like, maybe this has been something Karim has mentioned before, but I can't think of it at all. I don't know. Anyway, Hoyan says, "Karim is useless. He's not the Rekka we know." And Rekka just grins. "There may be a hole in my chest, but my memories of you both are burned right into my heart." And then Hoyan snaps at him, "Quiet you. You're no more than a shadow of the real Rekka." And then Karim says, "If you can remember, tell me this. Was Rekka Hoshimiya always just a hot-headed asshole? Or did you start hot-headed and become an asshole?" I remember that line, actually. So maybe this whole inner conflict with Karim was set up in that line way back when. Like, I think that might have been right after Rekka died. Karim might have asked that. Anyway, and then Karim yells, "It was the evangelist that exploited your sense of justice and lured you towards the path of evil, right?" So yeah, Karim is just desperately trying to have a world where Rekka was just misguided. And then Rekka responds, "I was one of the orphans selected by Sister Sumire. Since the beginning till the very end, I can't remember a time where I strayed from the path of righteousness." So yeah, this has very much always been who he is. And Hoyan yells, "The heinous acts you've committed go against the will of the heinous acts you've committed go against the will of the Holy Saul. I am a disciple of Adola. I pray for the despair of humanity. And then Rekka continues, bring your hands to your chest and listen to me. You must be aware of death. Until the very end, there is despair in everything we set out to do. Don't get mad at me. I'm right behind you, guiding you. It's gonna be okay. And so, yeah, Rekka makes it very, very clear where he stands. And I like the shot here of Hoyan and Karim just kind of being taken aback at the fervency of Rekka's evil. And we see it through the hole in his chest. Meanwhile, we finally check in with the Cataclysm Force. In case you forgot about them from their one panel appearance back in like 20-something. Along with Fairy. We have seen a couple of times since then. And Fairy watches them. Fight with your former friend and despair. Defeat Rekka or go along with him. No matter the option, there is naught but despair. And then we cut to Company 4, who are Pawn and Karin, who are staring down Hague. And we see a very different take on the doppelganger with the two of them compared to Karim and Hoyan. Because Karin just says, Captain Hague, and Pawn stops him. No, that thing isn't Captain Hague. That heartless son of a fleet. He blows his whistle. Captain Hague would never fleet his own soldiers. Okay. Alright. And Hague just stares at them. Like, his eyes are, like, blacked out. And like I kind of said, I'm curious, because doppelgangers, as we saw with Shinra, and with Hibachi, are kind of the amalgamation of perception of the individual, what about, especially because Pong calls attention to Captain Hague would never kill his own soldiers, what about Hague's public perception would lead his doppelganger to kill his own soldiers? We know he was seen as kind of a weirdo, but there's a big gap between weirdo and would kill your soldiers. I don't know. It's another part of this whole concept I'm not quite following. Anyway, Pawn here has no time for all of the dilly-dallying Company 1 is getting up to. Get out of my sight, doppelganger. You're no more than a false image created by someone who's never even met him. Your very existence is repulsive to the Captain Hague that we at the Fourth respect so deeply. And then Hague runs towards Pawn now, still with the axe. Adola, more. Give me more. And Karin readies his scale shield. But Hague just smashes right through it with the axe, blowing Karin back. And then Hague readies another attack. Or no. So Karin throws some kind of something around Hague's neck and kind of snaps it. Or maybe I'm misreading that still? I'm trying to work out what's going on here. Because it looks like Karin or something binds itself, like wraps itself around Karin's wrist. And judging by this top of page 16, it looks like it's Hague's doing. But I can't quite figure out what it... Oh, it's the scarf! It's the scarf Hague has on. Okay. Somehow he's controlling that to wrap itself around Karin's wrist and send him flying into the wall. Pawn, like, whistles after him. But Hague lets him go, as he's, like, hit a telephone pole or something. Karin looks up at Hague, and Pawn body checks Hague. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but you know what I mean. Like, body slams Hague to deflect him. Hague jumps back. And then Karin says, without Ogun, all we can do is stay on the defensive. But Pawn tells him, that won't be a problem. Is Ogun about to come back now? Huh? I'll give myself a buff. And with fleet. I don't know. Hold on. I tried to do the high note fleet, but then I just didn't for the second one. My body might get pretty fleet up, but I can handle that. Fleet! Hold on. the skill to like flip between high and low registers that fast. Woof wheat! Woof wheat, Captain Hogg's wheat! Uh, and, and Karin just looks at him. I'm not sure if he's understanding or if he's just like, what the fuck? What the fuck, man? Stop with the whistle. Are you for real? But meanwhile, we finally check in on, Arthur and Vulcan, heading back towards Company 8 HQ to get whatever they need for the final fight with Dragon. And Arthur asks, are you sure about this? It's going to be a tough journey. And then Vulcan tells him, you're going to become a true knight and slay the dragon after all. What are you planning to do with the 8th anyway? And Arthur tells him, you'll understand when we get there. The Promised Land. The Shrine of Awakening. Special Fire Cathedral 8. And we see Special Fire Cathedral 8 gets a whole full page panel just showcasing it. And then our final scene rests on Arthur. An unprecedented trial awaits me here. What battles of despair commence throughout Tokyo. The Night King heads toward the Promised Land in order to destroy the dragon. What great trial awaits the 8th? To be continued in chapter 258, The Trial to Save the World. Okay. So, we also have a couple of translator notes here that I'm going to read, in case there's something interesting here. The first one is for Doppelganger in the Perfect Image of Rekka, the thing that Karim says. Karim uses the word Gugenka, embodiment, realization, materialization, to describe the image of Doppelrekka. Perhaps it suggests that the Rekka in front of him is the perception/embodiment of Rekka from Karim's perspective, which could explain why Rekka doesn't have an infernal-like appearance we've seen with other doppelgangers. Then again, maybe not, just thought the wording was interesting. That's honestly kind of what I touched on in that part of the chapter. What with the hole in his chest still showing up on the doppelganger, despite the fact that only, 4 people saw that. And then we have that Heartless Son of the Fleet. As you probably noticed throughout the chapter, Pan is tooting his whistle at very particular times during his speech. This mimics the original Japanese, where the locations of the whistling imply a TV-style swear word bleeping. Shout out to the translator for pointing this out, and solid move by Okubo. Okay, so yeah, I think that first translator note is kind of a good jumping on point, for some of my thoughts on this chapter, specifically Rekka and doppelgangers in general, in that, as I kind of pointed out, doppelgangers are supposed to be the collective conscious. How the collective unconscious views a person made manifest. It's why, Shinra is the scumbag kind of delinquent, why Hibachi hated the Tokyo Empire to an even greater degree than the real Hibachi did. That's kind of the thing. And this is especially a thing with that part's more a thing with Hague, who is for some reason attacking the Fire Force for some reason that I hope will get explored in greater detail later, especially given that Pong calls it out on page 13. But hold on, I feel like I lost my train of thought somewhere with Rekka. I don't know, something about Rekka. The fact that he has the hole in his chest feels very, very particular to Karim and Hoyan's perception of him. And I feel like that could be tied to the fact that he still looks incredibly human, with the exception of, the hollow hole in his chest. But also, we see that Karim's perspective of him has been that he was just kind of led astray somehow. And that is kind of different from the Rekka we see. If it was Karim's perspective of Rekka, then Doppel-Rekka would just be misguided and not human. And not evil, I mean. Because, Karim has apparently been desperately holding on to this idea that Rekka was still a good guy who at some point during their friendship was kind of led astray. And Doppelganger clears that up. No, this is how I've been from the beginning. Your hope is for nothing. Which, actually, there's an interesting thought. What if his appearance here, and his specific revelation that Rekka, the revelation that we already knew, that Rekka has always been like this, does seem specifically timed to negatively impact their hope. And given that their current goal is to instill hope, they have to have hope to instill it. I don't know, a lot of thoughts. There are a lot of thoughts in this chapter. Yeah. Yeah, I hope we have I'm still looking forward to the rest of the Company 1 Lieutenant reunion. I think it will almost certainly have a very good emotional climax. As Karim, has to accept the fact that Rekka was never a good guy. But I do feel like, I don't know, something is just not quite clicking. Part of it is that even with Karim's line, that as I recall, it did come straight from the Company 1 arc. Was Rekka Hoshimiya always just a hot-headed asshole, or did you start hot-headed and become an asshole? Even with that line, it still feels like Karim had moved past this. And I guess I can accept that seeing Rekka in the flesh again has kind of brought all these issues back that he thought he had moved past. But I don't know. Anyway, then we see Fairy again for a single page. And he's just like, yeah, I'm here to make all your lives miserable again. And then we get Hague, which is, again, it's more seemingly straightforward, in that there's none of this, trying to work out a character's moral stance that Karim did with Rekka. But also, the fact that Hague is even doing this fight makes it weirder, for reasons I've already made perfectly clear. That's just not who Hague was seen as I recall. But then, yeah, we see Pawn has buffed himself up, and so he can hopefully go toe-to-toe with Doppelhague. And then we cut to Arthur, who has something at Company 8, and what looks to be the focus of next chapter, that should help him with round 3 of the fight with Dragon. And so, yeah, there's a whole lot to dig into in this chapter, and I'm really excited to see where we go from here. But I feel like, especially with the Rekka thing, I feel like it will end well, but it's kind of very slightly straining believability to set it up, I guess. And I might be completely off base here. I might just be completely wrong in my kind of discomfort. But yeah, I don't know. I like the chapter, and I think I'll like this arc more and more as it goes on, or at least this fight more and more as it goes on. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to just wait and see next time. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, do whatever makes it happy, And remember, your life is your own, okay? Bye!